Hi friends, this is Tony from Historic and American Homes, back again with part 2 in this first video series on designing a small modern home using SketchUp and Layout. In this episode, I had thought to cover everything about file organization and basic SketchUp modeling tools and an application of those tools, an example. But the whole thing turned out to be like 48 minutes long, and it just seemed too long for the one video. So I decided to break it up into two parts. This will cover file organization and it'll introduce the tools. And then in the next part, in the next episode, we will use those tools to make one of the patio doors that you're seeing in the model. Thanks. So let's see, the first thing I wanted to mention is this. I use SketchUp Pro, which is the paid version, and it comes with a companion program called Layout, which allows me to do full construction drawings. There is a free version of SketchUp available at sketchup.com. I've heard that it's fine. You can do all the basic modeling that you need to do for a project like this. However, it does not include the construction documents part. So if you are going to be working with a designer, you can build a model in this form and then share it with your designer who can develop construction documents. Otherwise, you may want to consider investing in SketchUp Pro once you've gotten familiar with the free package. I also do not use plugins. There are lots of companion programs people have created that are very useful for doing all kinds of more complicated or more specific tasks. But I have found that I am able to do probably 99% of what I need with just the tools that are in the basic SketchUp package. So you won't be finding any information about plugins in this video. Let's take a quick look at file organization. Here's my main model file, and this contains just the building elements. It'll also have furniture and fixtures. It does not contain any information about the building site. So let me show you in my folder here. We're looking at this file right here. That's my main model file. For a project like this, I will make two additional files. One is for developing the site, and a third will be if I'm going to make a video walkthrough or some still rendered images. Then I'll use a third file called vid. For more complicated projects, I might also have a file that is just for framing. If I decide I want to develop it, if the framing is complicated and requires a lot of modeling itself, I may do that in a separate file. Now these files are all connected to each other. All of the main work is going on in this file that I've highlighted here, which is the one we have on the screen in the background. The site file is very useful though, as often it's used as a starting point. I mentioned Nick Sonder in my last video. His process, he designs a lot of really beautiful homes in the mountainous part of California in the Sierra Mountains. And so he's designing buildings on very complicated and sloping sites. So he will actually start with a site model and develop a basic series of platforms that become floor levels in the houses. And then he will copy those floor platforms into his main site, into his main building model, and build them out. That way he's not dealing with all of the site issues while he's also modeling the house, but he has incorporated them from the start. You see, the thing about sites, let me go over to the site file here. The thing about site models is that they get big very fast. They get big in file size terms, and so they can bog down your work. So because the geometry of a site model, this is a very simple one, and the geometry of a site model can really tax even a good computer. So that's one reason, probably the main reason, for keeping the site in a separate file. So here we have a site model from a previous project. That's the old house over there that I stole this file from, and I have not done anything to it yet. I've got my new house imported into it, but I have not made any effort to develop the site yet. We'll get to that in a couple of videos down the line once the house itself is a little more developed. I just wanted you to see that it's actually imported into the site. The house model is imported into the site. And the same thing will happen with the video model. So I have got a video file set up, and here it is, empty. There is nothing in it right now. When I get ready to set up doing a video, I'll import the site model into the video model, and that will allow me to do exterior aerial walkthrough. Well, anyway, we'll come back to that. So back to this guy. Where are we? We want to look at the interface. Okay, so let's look at the SketchUp interface. We have the main modeling screen. Up at the top left corner, you have your usual drop-down menus that contain a bunch of different tools. You will find that tools have, and I strongly encourage you to learn these, shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts. All of these different tasks you can perform have their own keyboard shortcuts, and these are really, really handy. So when you're starting out, I encourage you to look up in the toolbar for the first time, and then once you know what the shortcut is, try to avoid using the drop-down menus, because you'll work a lot faster if you know the shortcuts. Here we've got, below the drop-down menu, we've got another set of tools. Again, same thing, it's handy to have them there, but you really still want to use your shortcuts whenever possible. You can adjust what's up here in this toolbar by right-clicking, and you've got a bunch of things you can turn on and off. Let's see, maybe I'll turn on camera. So this allows me to control the location of where I'm viewing things from. Now I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to turn it off again. But there it is. You know, if you wanted to add or subtract things from your toolbar. On the right side, the default tray works great for me. It's basically a series of, I use this a lot. So this is a series of trays that you can open up, and they provide information about elements in your model, and they also allow you to do a certain amount of editing of your model. Let's take a minute to look at these trays a little bit more and see what they tell us about the model and how we can use what's up there. Let's start with the first one, top, entity info. Basically that tells us information about specific objects in the drawing. So here's a post. Here's a wood post. Let's get to it. There. It says solid component. It's got a name, post 1, and it tells me that there are 15 of them in the model. This one, there's back here, some more along the front. If I decide that I don't want to edit that anymore, I want to lock it from editing so that I don't accidentally make a change to it, I can control that in the entity info by clicking on this little lock here. See, it turns red. Now it's locked. That one's not, but that one is. I'm going to unlock it, and we'll move on to the next. Materials. This is where we get into making pretty colors and applying textures to surfaces. We'll get to that later in the series. Component, same, we'll come to that later. Styles, that's a good one. So styles changes the view that you see on the screen. It changes the appearance of what you see on the screen. Right now I'm using a style I created called Design, which is crisp and clear and easy to see all the elements. It's got hard edges, easy to see for editing purposes. Maybe not the most beautiful looking image though. Then if I wanted to do something for presentation, I might change the style and use, let's see what, these are some of the standard styles that come with SketchUp. And just so you know, you can make your own as well, but we won't cover that here. I just want to go back to the way I had it. But making new styles and editing existing styles is all done right from this this tray. Tags, very useful, very important. This is fundamental to building your model. Every element you see in the model is built on this and uses the untagged. This used to be called layers in earlier versions of SketchUp, by the way, and they just changed the name to tags in this most recent version. This used to be layer 0. And basically all of your modeling happens on this untagged layer. And then what you do is once you have an object, go back to our column. Once you have an object, you assign it to a tag. And of course, I created these tags here. Hit the plus sign and you can create a tag, give it a name, give it characteristics. So this column here is on the tag untagged. It's the basic element. Now, what I've done is I've put it in a group called structure, concept structure. That's down here. And that group is within a further group called Walls 1, Architecture Walls 1. So these tags allow me to group all of these elements in the organization that I need in order to create good construction drawings and also to control the imagery. So for example, I have the roof. In terms of controlling what I see, I have the roof up here. Now, if I want to be doing work inside the house, it's awkward to have the roof in the way while I'm working. So I can just simply turn off the visibility of Architecture Roof 1. So the roof geometry is all still there in the model, but I don't have to see it now. And I can get inside here more easily and move around and work on pieces. So I have all my doors and windows. In a tag for doors and windows, I have all my fixtures and appliances in a separate tag, so I can turn them on and off, turn the fixtures off, turn it back on again. Turn the doors and windows off, turn them back on. So that's how tags work. Extremely important to be able to use them well. Let me turn the roof back on here. Now the next one on the list, shadows. I never model with shadows on because it also slows things down quite a bit. But during the course of working on the model, it may be useful to turn them on and off just to see what's happening, what results are happening. Now, there's a lot to shadows, and maybe I'll cover it in more detail later, but for now, I'm just going to turn the shadows on. That's under the View menu, Shadows On. Now you see the shadow from this roof line coming down the wall. You can see it shading these windows. Shadow on the ground. There's actually no ground in this model because that's in the site model. But that's shadows, and Control Q turns them on and off. That's my keyboard shortcut. You can adjust your location, which I'll get into in another series, and then you can adjust the day and time. So this shadow is showing the 8th of November at 12 noon. But if I wanted to see 1st of June or shadow in the month of June, I just adjust the date here. If I want to change the time, I can adjust the time. And as you can see, the shadow is considerably different in June than it is in November. Scenes. What you see all across the top here are scenes that I have created. These are fixed views. Each scene saves a particular image from a particular direction using a certain style. These are useful both for modeling purposes. Like I have a view that says all on, that turns all my tags on. I have one that's for first floor. If this was a 2-story house, this would show me the 2nd floor. And then these are the views that I've created that will tie into creating construction drawings later on. Let's look at a few of the most basic modeling commands. Line, rectangle, circle, push, pull, erasing, fixing faces. For a start, line. It all starts with a line. L is the shortcut. Click somewhere to start your line. It's the starting point of your line. Pull it in the direction you want it to go. Type in the distance, say 12 inches. Oops, excuse me, line. Type in the distance 12 inches. There you go. There's your 12-inch long line. E will allow me to erase that because I don't need it. I'm going to erase that too. You can also pull it. You can pull it in any direction, whatever direction you want it to go. If you want it to be orthogonal, you'll see that it highlights automatically to red or to green. Blue, which is the vertical axis, is a little harder to get. One way to get it is to use your up arrow. Now you see I just pressed my up arrow and I'm drawing the line upward. Again, you can also use your right and left arrows for red, left arrow for green, blue arrow for up. All of these are easy ways to control the direction the line is being drawn. Escape if you change your mind. That's mine. You'll use that a lot. Rectangle is another one that you'll use a lot. So that's just simply R. It asks for the first point and it asks for the second point. And as you can see, it's forcing me to work on the horizontal plane here. There are ways around that if you want to avoid the horizontal plane, but we'll start with that. So now I've got it pulled in the direction I want it to go. If I have a specific size I want, I will just type in the dimensions. Now it's important to note which one comes first, X or Y, red or green. I'm never quite sure which one's going to come first, so I look down in the bottom right corner of the screen and it's telling me what I have, the direction I'm going at the moment I'm pulling. So if I pull off to the right here, it's telling me it's 12 foot something long and 1 foot 9 inches something wide. So I know now which one I want to type first. If I want it to be 24 by 12 or 12 by 24, I can take my cue from that little thing down in the right corner. So I'm just gonna click on 2 points and then type it in 24, 12. 24, 12. That's what I just typed in, and it gave me a rectangle that's 24 inches wide by 12 inches long. There's another way to do these rectangles if you know it's going to go in a specific spot, but you're not sure of the size, and that's by using the tape measure tool, T. Notice my cursor is going to change and look like a tape measure when I press T. Now I can take that and say I want it to line up with this edge that I've already got here. I can just double click on that edge and I get a guideline. That's not a physical piece of my model, that's just a guideline, something that I can use to build my geometry from. I'll put another guideline over here. And now I can draw my rectangle to fill this space. It'll snap to that corner. And I have a rectangle that's exactly filling the corner where I want to have a little patio outside that patio door. Now the next tool I'm going to use is push-pull, the push-pull tool, which gives it some dimension, 3 dimensions. That's just simply P. And you can see the cursor has changed. There's an arrow. I can pull it up. If I have a specific dimension I want to go, I can type that in, say 6 inches. I just type 6. Or I can get it to snap to something if I want it to match something that's already there. I'm just going to say 6 for now. So there's my little patio outside the patio door. So at this point, that's just a series of faces and lines. It's not a combined object. And sometimes in the course of drawing geometry like this, you might accidentally find that a face has disappeared for some reason. A piece of it got lost in the shuffle somewhere. You can fix that simply by drawing a new line on one of the existing edges, and it'll close it back up again. Let me delete it. You can see there, and then I will watch this corner over here. I'll draw my line over here, and you'll see how it fills up the void. So now it's fixed. That's something that happens a lot. Nothing to panic about. Fixing faces. Now we have our block here, and it's a bunch of separate pieces. I can click once and on a face and I get that face. I can click once on an edge and I get that edge. If I double click on a face, I'll get the face and the pieces that immediately touch that face. If I triple click, I'll get all the free geometry that's not already grouped together in other elements. I'll get all of it selected. So now that I've selected this whole patio, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to make it a group. And this is something that I generally do right away with almost everything I draw, is group the pieces, because they are much easier to manipulate when they're grouped. When pieces are not grouped, they tend to connect with other ungrouped pieces in ways that you don't always expect. So I know my patio is separate from the house floor. It's separate from these posts. I don't want it to alter those elements, so I make it a separate group, and then I can edit it. For instance, maybe I decided I want to make it 2 inches thicker. I use the push-pull to make it 2 inches thicker. Well, we just looked at line, rectangle, push-pull guidelines using the tape measure. So let's take a quick look now at circles and inferencing. C is circle, type C. Click on the center point, wherever you want the center, pull it in one direction, and then type in the radius, let's say 6, and then enter. That gives me a circle with a 6-inch radius or a 12-inch diameter. I'm going to make piers to support these posts. These 3 posts over here on the carport, at the moment, they're sort of floating. The bottoms of the posts are floating. You see that? There's nothing between them and the ground. And in fact, there's going to be a 12-inch diameter pier that goes centered on the post, going down into the ground and down maybe 2 feet below the surface of the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my navigation tools. My scroll on my mouse allows me to zoom in and out. And I am going to draw a circle that is centered under this post. So I start by typing C, and then without clicking on anything, I'm just going to let the mouse hover over one edge until it finds the center, and finds the midpoint. It says midpoint in post 1. And then I'm going to, again, without clicking on anything, you see it's pulling a red dotted line. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. I'm going to hover over the other edge to the midpoint. It found the midpoint, and then I'm going to let my mouse drift towards the center until it finds both of those midpoints. Now it located the center of that post for me. I didn't have to go in there and do any measurements or anything. I'm going to click once to establish the center point. I'm going to pull it in the direction I want to go, and I'm going to type 6, enter. And that gives me a 6-inch circle centered under my post. Now there's no depth to that yet, so I'm going to use push-pull, P, click on the face and pull it down in the direction I want it to go, and I'm going to type 36, enter. That gives me a 36-inch pier, and 12 inches of it happens to be above the surface of the ground. And we look underneath, there's the rest of it going down into the ground. Now at this point, it's a bunch of unconnected geometry, separate pieces, and I want to group it like I did with the patio. However, I'm going to, instead of using what's called a group, I'm going to use a component. So I'm going to start by triple clicking on it to select all of it, and then right click, and I'm going to make it a component, and I'll explain what a component is and why I'm using that instead of a group. I'm going to give the component a name. I'll call it Pier 1, and I'll put something in the description, carport post pier. I want to replace the selection with the component, and I want to create. Now I have made what it just looks like a group, just like the patio looks like a group, but there's an important difference. If I were to copy this patio, if I were to make a copy of this patio and change the copy, the original patio is unchanged. However, if it's an element that's repeated, like this post pier, there's going to be 3 of them. I'm pretty sure that if I have to change one of them, I'm going to be wanting to change all 3. So they basically should all match. So I'm going to make 2 copies of this. M is for move. Click Control, and it brings, see the little cross, the little plus sign? That means it's not just moving it, but making a copy and keeping the original. I'm going to drag in the green direction. That makes a copy. And now I want a second copy. Control M, Control, and there we go. So now I have 3 copies. And now, if I decide that this post pier needs to be deeper for some reason, I can go into this, I can go into any of them. I'm going to make it 12 inches deeper. So I'm going to P for push pull. I'm going to click on the face and I'm going to pull down. You can do it. There you go. 12 inches, enter. And all 3 of them changed. Maybe I decided it doesn't need to do that. 12 inches, enter, it goes back up. 12 inches, enter, back up. So you see all 3 of them have changed. That saves me a lot of editing work. 12, enter. So there we are. That's why you would use a component, a repetitive element. These are really handy, especially for doors, windows, kitchen cabinets, anything that's going to be repeated. These beams in the roof are components. So if I were to edit one of them, they all change. Okay, we're going to end it there for now, and in the next video we will do an example using the techniques we just saw here. Please do hit the like button, subscribe, click on the bell for notifications, and come back for more. I'll be back again in a few days. Have a great day. Bye.